Really appreciated. This was to be the first of our police board ordinary meetings held outside of the headquarters and outside of normal working hours so they'd be more available to the people. It happened with the retirement of Chief Belmar being announced that this was also an appropriate time to receive comment from the community about what the board should look for in a new police chief. We've announced that we would have limited comments and have the comments limited to 3 minutes. So far, we only have 8 people who have asked to speak, so we might let that go to 5 minutes and give you just a bit more time, so long as everybody that wants to be able to speak has the opportunity. What we would like you to focus on is what are the attributes or qualities we should be looking for in a new chief. This isn't a time to endorse particular candidates or to have an Iowa caucus or some kind of a primary event. It's a time for us to listen to what we should be looking for. As of yet, we haven't even opened up for applications, nor have we determined what the applicant pool should be. So all of that would be premature. But there are a few things we need to do before we get to comments. And the first thing I'll do is call the meeting to order and ask for the roll call.
Commissioner Gardner?
Here.
Commissioner Hassler?
Here.
Commissioner Price?
Here.
Commissioner Punch?
Here.
Commissioner Schwerin? Here.
And if we're ready, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of our January 14 and February 12 meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Is there new business, Chief?
Members of the board, Mr. Chairman, there is new business. I have a police services agreement, City of Belle Fountain Neighbors, a police services agreement, City of Chesterfield, a police services agreement, City of Eureka, and a police services agreement, City of Welda City. May you direct a motion for those contracts?
Is there a motion that those contracts be approved?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I have a professional service agreement, City of Clayton, a professional services agreement, legal and liability risk management, and a professional services agreement, public grants and training initiatives. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chairman, moving on to general orders, we have General Order 20-022, Department Organization, General Order 20-034, Field Reporting System, and General Order 20-107, National Incident-Based Reporting System. We will be necessarily holding General Order 20020 this evening. May I have a motion for those general orders?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, I believe that completes all the formal business we need to do. I hope that wasn't too bad. And now we're ready for comments. Mr. Wilson, or Terry Wilson? Mr. Wilson, yes.
Good evening.
There's a timer over here, and if you pay attention, it says 3 minutes, but since we only have we'll go to 5, and there may be more people later.
Absolutely. Good evening to the chairman and the rest of the board. I'd like to first just thank you all for the transparency in hearing from the community with the future of the police chief in the St. Louis County. And I'd also like to answer your questions. And I don't think I introduced myself. My name is Terry Wilson, and I am a Jennings City Councilman, and I'm also on the Jennings School Board. And I'm also the father of Terry Wilson and Logan Wilson, and the husband of LaCrystal Wilson. I like to always acknowledge my titles appropriately. But anyway, just to answer your all's questions, not to take up too much time, the question you all posed was, what are the 2 or 3 most important attributes the board should consider in their selection of the next chief of police? And that's a very good question. And I'm glad that you all want that question answered when selecting a chief. This is a very important decision that will not only determine the future of safety and all the other issues that we're dealing with in our region now, but it restores trust when we make a careful decision, when we make an educated decision. And so I'll leave you with my 3 most important attributes. I think we need someone that has integrity. We need someone that is community-oriented and has relationships, strong relationships with all of St. Louis County. And I believe that we need someone who is ready to lead on day one, who has a proven track record. And I know you all said you don't want to hear any endorsements or anything, but I do have a letter prepared that I will mail to you all. And those 3 attributes are spelled out in the person that I, along with a lot of folks in the community, are recommending. And I hope you would strongly consider that particular person that the community is recommending to you all. And so I thank you all for your time, and I look forward to other dialogues leading up to the selection of the future of public safety in St. Louis County. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments, and I appreciate the way you'll let us know who you favor instead of making that a big deal here. I think that was very thoughtful of you. Thank you. Mr. Mark Beelman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the fine Hazelwood School District, which that's where you are residing. My name is Mark Bellman. I am the president of the Board of Education for the Hazelwood School District in the absolute fine North County area. And I say that very strongly because the folks that are here in the crowd tonight are concerned about North County. While we are concerned about all of St. Louis County, we've had the pleasure of working with past captains of this community. And it is because of those past experiences that a police chief is what is needed for our community, who also has those attributes. A chief that can build trust is valuable. That's out talking with all of the community. And one who is diverse and able to talk to the entire community, and not just diverse in North County, but diverse because North County is most definitely different than South County as well as West County. It's tough when we're the best, and hopefully they can pick it up. But we are the best, no question about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been here and started here first, which makes a lot of good sense now, doesn't it? People skills. Someone who can communicate and talk with a very diverse group. That is valuable. Someone who has the opportunity, who can speak firmly when needed, but also sincere when they're talking with parents. Parents today have a difficult time dealing with their children. And so it's also very valuable for a police chief who knows how to deal with children. As we look around in the media today, we see a lot of crime and a lot of problems, all starting with our youth. And so that person has to be in tune with the youth and who has experience with the youth. That is also very valuable. And then I mentioned diversity. In today's world, everything is diverse. And somebody has to be able to communicate with all parties and everybody that's involved. I too have a recommendation, which I will be glad to send you. If not, it's already in the newspaper, in the St. Louis American. But that's the type of person that our community needs to lead us for the entire St. Louis County area. Thank you for this time.
Mr. Kent Swanson.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming out. The first thing I want to say is we need to be promoted from within. I don't know if you've already decided from within or out. We need to be promoted from within and are very capable ranks. Also, I need to have a good rapport with the county council, especially in getting down to the grassroots, down to, like Mr. Bellman said, enabling our youth to be able to express their feelings and be able to get out into the community and help them. Another point would be is to be able to stand their ground. If they feel that they are absolutely right about a point, to be able to, I guess, maybe buck you guys, I don't know. But anyway, to be able to stand their ground. Lastly, I would like to thank Roger Johnson for his dedicated service up here in North County. He has done a lot. He's been in the community, and we need to give him thanks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Beverly Dow.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Dow. I'm one of the trustees from Woodford Subdivision. And tonight I will be speaking on behalf of Dr. Jerry Eichholz from Partridge Run here. He was not able to be at the meeting tonight. Dr. Eichholz is the treasurer for the Paddock Forest Residents Association and also the vice chairman of the North St. Louis County Problem Solving Committee. This is what he believes is needed as the next police chief for the St. Louis County Police Department. We will need a chief who will demand officers to be familiar with the county ordinance and be proactive rather than reactive in enforcing them. We need a chief who understands you have to deal with the little issues before they lead to bigger issues, and who does not give excuses or allow such excuses for dealing with supposed little issues because there's too many big issues to deal with. If little issues are dealt with promptly, fewer big issues will make themselves evident. The next chief should have a minimum of a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, should be a graduate of the FBI National Academy, should have at least 20 years of diverse police experience and leadership as part of the total career experience, as well as command experience in multiple areas. We need a chief who will insist on implementing and sustaining a true community policing approach.
Thank you. Mr. Greg Porter.
Good evening. My name is Greg Porter, number 6 Crook and Port, 63033, which is in unincorporated St. Louis County. That's this subdivision. I'm the president and secretary of the Paddock Forest Residents Association Incorporated, which is a trustee for Paddock Forest, and I'm also the chairman of the North St. Louis County Problem Solving Committee. To answer your question, what are the 2 or 3 most important attributes the board should consider in your selection of the next police chief? My suggestions are as follows. We need someone with many years of diverse police experience in various capacities that is already working for the St. Louis County Police. We need someone who has been a precinct commander and has had vast experience in working with diverse groups of people and other groups, including businesses, nonprofit organizations, churches, civic and neighborhood groups, as well as active individual citizens. And we need someone who understands the many issues facing St. Louis County today, such as the decline of some neighborhoods, who will proactively work in the communities not only to address and enforce the ordinances that affect the stabilization and preservation of neighborhoods, but who will also work to educate and change undesirable behavior. Thank you.
I'm busy taking notes, so sometimes I don't get to look up and thank you quickly enough, but thank you for your comments. Mr. John Bone.
Good evening, distinguished commissioners, Justice Price. I would like to revisit my good friend, Mr. Bellman's. If you had noticed his remarks when he says North County, it's spelled N-A-R-T-H, North. Thank you for allowing me to come before you today. Dear commissioners, with the announced retirement of St. Louis County Chief Belmore in April, and your willingness to even host this event and gather the public, it represents a new phase of representation on the St. Louis County Police Commissioners Board. We are very hopeful and thankful for this profound change and how the board has operated in the past and with greater potential for transparency. But transparency should not be limited to the commissioners asking the public what are the 2 or 3 most important attributes the board should consider in their selection of our next chief. It should also include a public release of the selection process and criteria and the ability for the public to ask questions and to hear directly from candidates or finalists. This was professionally and successfully done in St. Louis City when they were in search of their police chief, and it provided a value added to the city's selection process. So at this time, speaking on behalf of St. Louis County NAACP, I failed to mention I am the president of St. Louis County NAACP. We're asking the board to express its disposition concerning this very important matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Reverend Duvall. There you go.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I know you said 5 minutes. I'm a preacher, and this is a former church. And I do respect the parishioners.
You recall the study of South Baptist preachers?
Yes, sir. So listening to the previous speakers, and we talk about qualifications, We understand and respect qualifications. Those are things that you and I can look on paper. Paper can share. But does it speak to the heart and the ability of carrying out what's in your mind academically versus what you can perform in the streets of citizens across the county? Instead of me, I guess I'm going to suggest some reading for the police commissioners. 2015, the PERF report. I'll get the links and send them. What's in the PERF report is not just for St. Louis County Police. It's for the entire region of the county. So one of the things I'd like to see in a chief is for a chief to improve the relationships with the municipalities of the current chiefs and respecting those departments. Because if the primary is public safety, then we should be doing it collectively in respect of each municipality. The Ferguson report. Where are the action items? Review the action items, bring the depth and the breadth of the report into the candidates and ask them how they would demonstrate the change, not how they can articulate it by reading. 2016, the COPS report, where there was 109 recommendations from the Department of Justice on the St. Louis County Police Department, which your predecessors did what they did, and I'm still looking for some tangible results, not a regurgitation. It's like preaching the same sermon with the same amens. I need to see it and live it. Then, these are not mine, but you might be familiar with them. Building trust and legitimacy. How can you build trust or rebuild trust? Well, when the police do a great thing, we all celebrate with them. But when they do something wrong, don't send the public affairs guy. Don't send, I like Sergeant Grant, but don't send him out to give the bad news. Bring the leadership before the community so the leadership can speak to the community about what something may or may not have gone right or wrong. You want to rebuild trust? Come from the ivory towers and talk to the people. How do we restore the trust? By building that collaboration that I'm talking about with other departments. Legitimacy is too strong of a word. Policy and oversight. We have policy as well as you fine people have found out there are so many policies. But more importantly, what do these career officers bring relative to demonstrating the policies, and when are there rooms for change? Opportunity for change. Some of the things that the county still operates are years old. Where is some new policies that would prevent that $19 million snafu? Community policing and crime reduction. These two are connected. Community policing and crime reduction. I wonder why our former president had those two, because he didn't write them. Police professionals wrote them. If you want to reduce crime, you have to have a policing effective model to get people in the community to talk to you, to help reduce the crime. So we're looking for some examples and demonstrations of any of the candidates that have those qualifications and can show it through their experience. Training and education. Lord knows there's a training budget. Has anybody taken a look at it lately and what it still does? I think what you put in is what you get out. So if you're putting the same stuff in, we're getting the same results out. Let's look at training and education. Lastly, we believe I support law enforcement. Contrary to what others may think, I served in the United States Army. I was a military police. I have not forgotten I believe in law and order, but I believe in equal justice, equal protection under the law. All those things we say, I want to see it demonstrated, not said from a microphone. So officer wellness and safety is premier. Those are 6 pillars not written by me, but by the 21st century policing. I believe that those staples, that we can find examples in other cities, can help us peer down to who the best candidate is for chief. My name is Reverend Philip Duval. I'm the Social Justice Chair for the Missionary Baptist State Convention.
Thank you for your comments. And Reverend? Reverend,
Yes, sir.
can we be sure to have your prayers to guide us?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Ms. Kathleen Mason.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathleen Mason. One of the attributes I would like to see in the next police chief, I would like for him or her to be sensitive to all the communities that he or she will serve. We need more police presence in North County neighborhoods and to get to know the residents of North County. Thank you.
Ms. Rochelle Gray.
Good evening. I'm Rochelle Gray, St. Louis County Councilperson for the 4th District. Primarily, I did want to come to thank you for coming out this evening and hosting a meeting here. One of the things I did ask of the commissioners when you were appointed was that you try to hear from the community and listen to some of their concerns. So this was a great first step in coming out to meet us.
And we thank you for, I know how busy your schedule is and how many meetings you need to go to. Thank you for
I
coming
actually
tonight.
have 3 today and tomorrow too. But I did want to be here and I'm glad to be here. I didn't come specifically to speak about the search for a new chief, but since that is what you requested of us, I think Reverend Duval was looking at my paper because I had all the things that he mentioned. Community policing, I think, is very, very important. As a legislator previously, I had several pieces of legislation that addressed community-based policing. Getting to know your community, as just was mentioned before, sensitivity training, de-escalation, and cultural competency training that needs to be increased. We need to see more diversity in the police force, and those who are there, or who are our officers, our current officers, and our future officers need to feel comfortable and not have to worry about any racial issues while being on the police force, so that needs to be addressed, meaning the changing the racial climate within the police department. And also, of course, we want to see a reduction in crime. Of course, if someone knows how to do that, I think they will become a millionaire. So that's not an easy task, but we do need to address that, and more specifically, gun violence, if nothing else. There are a lot of issues that need to be addressed other than searching for a chief, and some of those were also mentioned previously. And I think it's very important that you guys, should I say, that the commissioners focus on other issues as well as you go through your task. But I did want to, I'll stop with that because I don't want to prolong the discussion, and I did want to just focus on what you requested that comes before us. So thank you for your time today, and again, I appreciate you coming to North St. Louis County.
Did I get it?
You got it correct.
All right, thank you.
Well, good evening to the members of the board. My name is Shanette Hall, and I am a law enforcement professional. I know some of you and some of you I haven't officially met as of yet, but I am a member and employee of your police department. I'm going to come to you today, this evening, with a little bit of a different angle. And like one of my great friends, Reverend Bill Duval, I'm definitely going to use my time this evening. What I wanted to do is I wanted to share a bit of a personal story with you. And I wanted to do this because I wanted you all to understand how important it is, not only to the citizens of St. Louis County, but also how important it is to us police officers at St. Louis County Police Department, the correct choosing of the next chief of our police department. And I'm also a firm believer in that in order to understand somebody effectively, you have to be willing to open your heart, because hearts reach hearts, correct? And so what I wanted to relay to you all is that I've been a police officer for some years now with this police department. And a few years ago, I found myself working in a precinct, in the Central County precinct, closer to the northern area. And I found myself being the only black female that was working the street at the time in that precinct. The only black female at that time. I ran into quite a bit of different people that I worked with. We didn't come from the same backgrounds, and that's okay. However, because of the fact that we didn't come from the same backgrounds, sometimes the implicit biases began to become very explicit. And it's okay to know that sometimes we all have implicit biases, but what goes wrong, or where it goes wrong, is when we are not able to correct our implicit biases to prevent them from becoming very explicit. While working on the street, and like I said, being the only black female, it got to a point of where my comrades decided, for whatever reason, and I think it had a racial undertone, was to not assist me on any of my calls anymore. At the time, that was something I didn't see how detrimental that could have been to my career. I didn't understand it at the time because I knew that I was just here to do whatever it was that I was supposed to do as a police officer, what it was I signed up to do, right? And so I worked through that issue. And ultimately, it led to the removal of one of my comrades who worked on the street next to me, who began to start this rumor of he didn't want to work next to me anymore because of who I was, and because I had thugs in my family, and because I had also had family members who liked to assault police officers, which was all fabricated. After that came about, I found out that that person was removed, and he was no longer allowed to work on the street at that time to so-called protect and to serve, whether it be someone's sister or someone's mother or someone's brother or whomever. After that, I thought the situation was done. I said, okay, he's gone. That's good, right? Little did I know that it was actually a gentleman that was looking out for me that I had no idea of. And that gentleman was one of the colonels that existed on our board. It wasn't until probably about a year later that I had a conversation with this colonel, and I'm going to respect you all saying that we don't want to look for any specific names at this time. But it was about a year later that I ran into that colonel and I had a conversation. And I asked him, why did you help me? Because you didn't know me. You knew of me, but you didn't know me. You knew I was a police officer. You knew I worked in the 2nd precinct. But other than that, you did not know me. So why did you help me? And he looked at me and he responded. And he simply said, because it was the right thing to do. I saw you out there by yourself. I saw that you were the only female, and not only just the only female, but I saw that you were the only black female working on your shift in the streets. And that you had people around you that were not going to help you. So I felt as if it was my duty to step in and do what needed to be done. That action was not completed by any of my supervisors at the time. That action was not completed by any of my lieutenants or anyone else on the department, but one specific lieutenant colonel. And to this day, I can honestly say, due to those actions of that one specific lieutenant colonel, that is the exact reason of why I continue to wear the brown shirt, which symbolizes me still being an employee with your police department. I've been approached by a number of different police departments to go and to work with them, simply because I'm a black female, an educated black female at that. but I decided to stay here because there was one person who possessed the leadership skills that embodied what it was that I wanted to follow. So when we're deciding what it is we want our next chief to be, I want you all to remember and to see someone's face who looks just like mine. Because we have African American police officers in our department that matter too. We are a part of this police department, and we would like to be heard, and be valued, and be respected, and be treated fairly. We want somebody to come along and possess enough courage to say, hey, not only am I just going to come out and speak about how important diversity is, and I may even dare to speak about how important inclusion is, but I'm also going to come out and speak about, and not only speak about, but show what true equitable measures mean. And I'm going to come and I'm going to show that this young black female police officer who is here, that she too matters, and that I'm going to help her. And that's the only thing that we are asking for, is that when you consider your next chief, we're not coming and I'm speaking to I'm not coming and asking you to fulfill a diverse number and say, oh, we need another black chief, or I'm sorry, not another, we need a African American chief, or we need a female chief, or we need some other type of chief that falls within another protected class. But what I'm going to say is we need a chief who is going to possess not only diversity in appearance, but diversity in thought. And that's highly important. It's a diversity in thought. We need someone who's going to be courageous enough to put people before corporations. We need someone who's going to be courageous enough to say that, yes, the marginalized groups of people in our police department matter too. We're going to need somebody to be courageous enough to speak up for us when we are not in positions of rank to speak up for ourselves. That is what matters to a lot of us that looks just like me in our police department. And so when you begin to make your choice, I ask that you remember a face that looks just like mine, and remember about 100 or so of African American police officers that are on our police department as well. And you can ask, what is it that I can do to make sure that they are also heard, like everybody else? Because inclusion is a good thing around here. Thank you.
Mr. Paul Ward.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming up tonight. As you make your search for a chief of police, appreciate that. Appreciate you taking our input. Also notice there's a lot of police officers here tonight, so I'd like to take the opportunity to thank them for all the work that they do. I'm fighting a little bit of a cold, so I apologize up front. My name is Paul Warden. My wife, Linda, and I live in Park Argonne, just north of Lindbergh and New Hallsbury. So you're going to get a specifically North County perspective at this time. We both grew up in North County, and when we first married, we started our family. We were glad to have a good, safe community to raise our kids in. When my children were growing up here, it was safe for them to walk to school. It was safe to walk to a park. You didn't have to worry. My kids are grown now and they've moved on. Linda and I have chosen to stay here in North County. All my family memories are in this community. But the area's changed immensely in the last 10, 15 years. It's not safe like it used to be. Our kids are no longer safe. I don't want my wife to go up to the store by herself anymore, let alone after dark. I definitely don't want to do that. Car thefts, carjackings are commonplace. Now, unfortunately, you can't go a couple of days without hearing about another shooting. Just last week, we had the police officer up on West Florissant was shot at Walmart. My heart goes out to his family. Last week, we met our new police captain, Tim Cunningham, here at this building in a neighborhood meeting. And I think, from my first impressions, that he sees clearly the problems here in North County, and he wants to have a positive impact on it. So I and we in North County, we look forward to working with him and his new Sergeant, James Malden. So as you guys are trying to make your decision for a new police chief, and you're looking for our input, and I appreciate that, I would ask a couple things. Number one, select somebody who will not accept the status quo here in North County. And somebody that will work with Tim Cunningham in his efforts to make our community safe again for the kids growing up here. Secondly, no matter who you select, the current situation in North County will not get better unless we have more police on the ground. Without a strong, visible police presence, things will continue to get worse. We need more officers, and we need them today. So I wish you guys the best and the best success in finding a new police chief. I hope it's somebody who will be focused on making all St. Louis County safer, especially from my perspective, making North County safer. And thank you for listening tonight and taking our input.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Zaki Perui. And I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly. I hope I was close. You were close.
First, let me say good evening. And let me just offer this compliment, first of all. When I first spoke to you, I think the first time you took office or had the first meeting, for me it was a sense of fresh, a breath of fresh air that I sensed from your board. And I just want to say publicly, I compliment you for coming into the community to hear from the people. I think they ought to deserve a round of applause. That's just, not to say that we'll agree with all your decisions, okay? But I come here as a representative of the organization, Universal African People's Organization. And I come here from the perspective thinking that this was just to be a regular meeting, because as head of the organization, we have some serious concerns. But before we get into our serious concerns, I also want to second Officer Shanette Howell. And wherever top-ranked person did what he did in terms of keeping you on the force, I think you ought to give that person some great consideration. So whoever that may be, I have no idea who that is, but I do compliment you there. But I come here on two levels. Since we're talking about policing, our organization takes some basic principles. Of course, policing ought to reflect the whole thing that the police ought to be servants of the people. That's what's supposed to be the thing, serve to protect. So in any profession, and I'm a former educator, and I can say publicly in education we had some bad apples. Same thing for the police force. And I came here in terms of a concern about speaking to the prior board about a case involving a 63-year-old African-American woman who was pulled over. And from our understanding of her story, which is on the front page of our newspaper, we publish a quarterly newspaper, where we're saying UAPO calls for the firing of a white police officer who violated the human rights of a 63-year-old woman. We put that out publicly. Of course, nothing has come of it. We understand someone was rumored that it was recommended that the officer be fired. I cannot verify that. So I'm coming to you to appeal to you directly, as well as share with the public through the copies of our newspaper. We do ask a $1 donation, but we'll give it free if you don't have $1. That we'd like for you to read this story. And to read, because when the young lady was violated, she did receive correspondence. And I was outraged. Let me just say this. I was totally outraged because that could have been my wife. It could have been possibly my daughter. It could have been any of you in terms of gender. So we cannot allow bad apples to be part of such a critical decision-making position. Because that person, it could have heightened to where that person, and the young lady said, and it's in here, it frightened her so bad that she urinated on herself. That's spirit. And if that officer is able to do that then or others, then it can lead to some other issues in terms of death for somebody, more social dislocation. So I'm going to ask that you please read this. The officer, I have to say it publicly, that we're calling for his firing is Nicholas Newberry. I have no problems. When she shared that with me that day, which happened in, I think, April of 2019, but I didn't hear about it until October. That same day we were at the St. Louis County Government Building to share with the county council. And I say that again. Think of yourself in that situation late at night. But I won't get into the details for the time frame. And you can get a copy of the paper. So I'm appealing to you. In closing, our organization also say principally, because, and that's why I salute you again. Looks like this is the beginning of a serious dialogue. Because, you know, in terms of many, if you know history, and I study history, most of the social, people say riots, we say rebellions, have started from some police incident, historically. So policing is real key. So we say that on a broader sense, going back to even Ferguson, every police force in every department, every city ought to reflect the ethnicity and the community in which they work. That's first. And so you may need to consider that in terms of policing in different communities. And they need to live within that community. And finally, need to have an effective civilian review board. And effective with subpoena power. So, I close, and if I may approach and give you a copy of it, complimentary to you, okay, and anybody else want it.
If you just leave them there, I'll make sure everybody gets it. That is great, thank you. Thank you very much. We had do we have some more? All right. Very good. Reverend McGee.
Good evening. I want to introduce myself. My name is Reverend Dr. K. Llewellyn McGee. I'm a pastor. I'm a 30-year retired chaplain for the U.S. Army, the first chaplain in the nation to serve under a governor, a chaplain with my fraternity. And I'm here because I have a concern and I want to give an answer, one answer to your question. I live directly behind this building on the other side of the ravine. Let me start by saying this. There's a term that we use in religion, and that term is righteousness. Many people don't talk about it in the secular world, but that's what I want you to focus on, a righteous person. And I want to talk about this concept as the attribute that I believe is necessary for our next chief. And let me tell you this story. When I retired from the U.S. Army and the Army National Guard 5 years ago, I wanted to be a chaplain because that's what I did in the Army. And so I got with a municipality and that chief and interviewed. Again, I'm being intentional about not using their name. And so I became a chaplain to that municipality. I went out on a daily basis or many days to ride with the police officers. And then in 2016, in Minnesota, there was a person by the name of Philando Castile. You will remember that case. And the person was killed in front of their baby and girlfriend. And I, who have been doing posts on Facebook, decided to talk about justice and understanding what someone may go through. And I posted that as I have been doing for many, many years. And I got a call from this chief. And the chief says, really, I got a call from a chaplain who was over me, and he says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Excuse me? What are you doing putting this post out about talking about justice and righteousness and all this?" And I said, "Well, I was doing what I have always done and I will continue to do." But it says, "Call the chief and talk to the chief," and I did do that. And the chief asked me the same question, "What am I doing?" And so I said, "I will come in and talk with you," which I came into the police department, and this captain talked to me, and he asked me this question, and that question was, "Whose side are you on?" Now let me tell you, I'm a man called by God to preach to people, but one thing I do not see is I don't see black and white, I see good and evil. I see righteousness and evil. So when he asked me that, I assumed that he meant, are you on the police side, or are you going to be on the side of people who are fighting for justice and righteousness? And my answer, obviously, was, I'm on God's side. So no matter who the police chief will be, I pray that they are righteous, meaning that they do the right thing. They don't try to cover up and say, "Oh, this is the blue line, or this is the black line." It is the right thing. That's the definition for learning, do the right thing. That's an old movie. So that one attribute is what I give to you on today. Many people have degrees, I have many. I love my time in the military, but I also know that many people who serve us, and I do say serve us, they are thinking about themselves and not the people they serve, and they have not learned that definition of what it means to be righteous. Thank you.
Mr. Elton Hooper.
I'm surprised. I thought we was just filling out the cards for review, for just a review and comment. But my name is Elton Hooper. I live at right down the way here in the Waterways Court. I've been in this community since my youngest daughter, she's 25 years old. She was born. She was brought home in this community. And I'm very surprised and excited to see that this type of forum is being presented to the public. So we can get, we can communicate back and forth. I am a little disappointed. I don't know if that's an empty seat over there. Is that a...
That was the chief's seat.
Oh, that was
and
the
he
chief's
felt
seat.
it would be inappropriate for him to sit in and listen to what people wanted for his replacement, and wanted people to be free to express themselves without concern for that. So that's why he's not here.
Oh, okay. Anyway, my background is I was a draftee of the Vietnam War. Okay, I did 39 and a half years with the United States government, retired from the Defense Department, and right now I am concerned. I'm concerned for the youth. I'm concerned for the relationship between the officers and the youth. I know there's a lot of challenge. It's even a challenge for me, because I have to discipline myself to be more patient with the youth and trying to educate them and also prepare them for the entrapments that's out here. Okay. So my thing, what I want to see more of is a forum where the youth can communicate back and forth with the officers. They can build a relationship. We can get used to seeing the officers. When I moved into the neighborhood, the officers, we used to have patrols that come through, drive through the neighborhood. It's very rare do I see that now. It's basically when I see it, it's only when there's a problem. So if we could work on those things and have those things in mind, it would be very helpful. I know that I want to commend, I know what it's like to be in, be responsible. The Army taught me how to be responsible with a weapon. And I know when you have a weapon, you have to be responsible. Because once that bullet leaves the chamber, it doesn't matter which direction it's going. So I'm asking everyone, officers, to discipline themselves. We all discipline ourselves. That we know that this is a responsibility. When you handle a weapon, you are handling a very powerful, it's a very powerful weapon. Because once a life is taken, it will not return. So with that, I hope that be helpful to the board, and I hope that be helpful to the community. I hope that be helpful to the officers. That we do appreciate it. We need officers. We live in a civil society. And a civil society got to be governed by rules and regulations. And being governed by rules and regulations, someone has to enforce those rules and regulations. And we got to be fair. We got to be fair. And there's honor. We call it the code of justice. You was held to a code. If you violate the code of justice or you violate a military code, you was held accountable. And that's what we got to do. We got to hold a person accountable, regardless if they are black, white, whatever, race, or color. They have to be held accountable. And I want to thank you all for giving us this opportunity. And it is my prayer that we get an officer who works with the community, or a police chief who work with the community, that be concerned about the community problems, and that we all can grow together and protect each other. All right?
Thank you. Miss Julia Schlegel.
Hello. I'm a homeowner in Richmond Heights, and I am a widow, a 59-year-old widow, trauma survivor from childhood abuse, and I have 2 teenagers. I've had some encounters with the police up until a couple of years ago. I have never, ever had any reason to doubt the safety of calling the police for help. I've never had any brushes with the law. I've never done anything illegal. I've probably got a parking ticket maybe or something like that here and there. I've I've lived in New York City. I have 2 college degrees. When I was, even though I have been a trauma survivor in massive amounts of therapy due to what had been done to me as a baby, I'm still sort of in that. I was able to go back to school, get my 2nd degree, and I was still as a social worker, a psychiatric social worker. And I became an advocate for the homeless people who are also trauma survivors. I don't buy into the mentally ill terminology that St. Louis does so heavily. It's not a biological thing. It's about being harmed when you're in a vulnerable position, and it looks a different way to different people. But basically, I think that's the root of everything. It's also the root of why police officers have PTSD and do things too quickly before they think. It's the root of a lot of things in our problem, in our society, and I'm here to say that I would like very much for our entire city and county, and especially the police board, because they carry weapons and because they not only carry weapons and radios, but they have at their disposal SWAT teams, and they were able to gather and control we citizens at their disposal, depending on what their opinion is of a situation, which is dangerous. It's a powerful, powerful tool, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. When I was a psychiatric social worker, I took my clients in my own little used car in the city and the county, parts of town I didn't know at the time. I advocated for them to get their home, their housing, their funding, their food, their medical care. A lot of them were veterans from Vietnam and various other traumas besides their childhood trauma. They preferred to live under bridges because they were so traumatized that they couldn't trust other human beings in housing. I was able to bridge the gap with them because I was also a trauma survivor, and I did a very good job at that. I worked with Places for People, Independence Center, Catholic Charities, Gary Morris from Department of Mental Health, who began Community Alternatives. They're all friends of mine. So I was both a trauma survivor, and then I became a colleague and co-worker with these people. I then fell in love, got married, and had 2 children. I'm here because on August 28, 2019, while in my home, after a few occurrences with the Richmond Heights Police and 1 or 2 with the Clayton Police, where my kids go to school and where I used to own a home before I bought the house in Richmond Heights, which is in the Clayton district. On August 28th, after I had called and canceled and had a very firm confirmation from the dispatcher, very firm, and within an hour of trying to get my kids settled down and going to bed, and the reason I called was because my son had been acting out. His father took his life 4 years ago before Christmas, so he was a survivor also. He had his issues. It was not an easy marriage, but we loved our kids and we loved each other and we did the best we could. Our kids were thriving up until that point. My son started acting out, partly because the way the Clayton police handled when I called them one time when my husband threatened suicide out of anger, not out of distress, in front of our then 12-year-old son Atticus. And they blamed me for the entire situation. They were not there when it happened. They blamed me, they mocked me, and they gave no concern whatsoever to the fact that I called for a well check for my 12-year-old son. And to make sure that my husband was behaving in a way that was safe for my 12-year-old son, because I wasn't at home when this happened. So that's one thing. And then on August 28th, when I called and second-guessed myself and realized that because of the way they handled the situation a week or so before when my son had acted out and pushed me, and I called for them to talk to him then, and I said, I'm a trauma survivor, I have PTSD, we don't have weapons, there is no danger, I'm asking somebody trauma-informed and or domestic violence-informed to come to my home, gently talk to my son, and inform him that if he hits a woman, he's going to end up with consequences in his future. My son is a well-educated, kind-hearted, wonderful person, as is my daughter. But he has issues and he needed to get help. I asked the police that night when they came in with 5 armed men, huge armed men in my living room, intimidated me, belittled me, degraded me, didn't offer any assistance in giving my son any limits or support of my parenting. In fact, it was exactly the opposite. They undermined everything I said and laughed at me in front of my son. Then they assisted him in getting to run away from me, but they refused to lift a finger to get him an assessment at St. Anthony's Hospital. And because he had jumped out of moving cars before, I couldn't do it by myself. I was also scared and exhausted by the fact that my son had acted out, and I loved him. I would never have called the police, except that Alive, the domestic violence agency, said that for his sake to learn consequences, and because none of the ones you're giving him are meaning much to him. There's no man in the house right now. He's angry and hurt that his father's gone, obviously. I knew that I took their advice. I regret it now. I will never call the police again in my entire life, not in this community, ever. I live in terror of the police now, especially when I'm in my home. But, so I canceled that call, that second larger call. I had a couple other instances where I was mocked, belittled, blamed in front of my son, who had admitted that he had unprovoked hit his mother, unprovoked. And they still didn't hold him accountable whatsoever. They instead demeaned me, asked if I was on medication. I said, I have PTSD, yes, and I am a survivor of trauma, yes. That does not have anything to do with this situation, though, but thank you. And turned it all against me. I mean, it just, made me a laughing stock. Gossiped with neighbors about it. So, this time I canceled the call, didn't expect them to come, put my kids to bed, we resolved it. I was scared of them, and I wasn't going to let them in my life again. But the fire department and the police department showed up, and they proceeded for 45 minutes to insist they were going to break down our front and back doors. And while my son and daughter were in our house with me, shaking like I was for our lives, we listened and witnessed and watched as I had the dispatcher on the phone on one, and I was tape recording the situation, videotaping and tape recording it for my safety, because they have refused to put their body cameras on each and every time I've had any request for their help. I have been harassed and threatened by them. So I'm talking to them through the door because I'm not going to let them in my home with their behavior. They demand and say it is their duty to come in, and they're going to come in. And it's front and back door. I have a 100-year-old house. Thank God they didn't get in. I don't know what would have happened, and I have no understanding. There is absolutely no explanation, none, that can excuse that kind of behavior. But I do know what other people have felt like before, so if there's anything good to glean from this, is that I have a voice and maybe I can get something done. Because this has happened to people before, and the woman at the thing we went to the other day at, on Delmar with Dr. Punch had her dog shot in front of her 6-month-old grandson and won the lawsuit against the police department for that. But I do know that this does go on. We all know it goes on. You just Google police misconduct, abuse of power. You know it goes on in our lives. Michael Brown. How do we explain that? How do we explain letting off officers for that? But this incident, my children and I were living in terror because we had done nothing. I was the victim, telling the police and the fire department, don't ask me why they were there, and how they could justify intruding through force in our home in Richmond Heights by St. Mary's Hospital. We've never done anything against the law. I told them clearly it was a confirmed cancellation because of the way they behaved before, but I was smart enough as a social worker to stay calm and through my door tell them I had the dispatcher on the phone who said they had no right to be there, and told them, please, can you just leave? De-escalate. You have no right to bust in my front or back door, but they proceeded to, and the damage on the door is obvious now, and all I can say is that I've lived there now in terror, and I've been harassed and threatened by them since then. My children ran away after that, 2 weeks after that, and are living with somebody else. The police have also been extremely inappropriate when it came to trying to get a well check and a custody check, which still haven't been done. There's been no legal loss of custody because I didn't do anything. If they're running away, it's because they're terrified, like I am.
5 minutes are up.
That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any opposed? We have, very good. Millicent Williams? Millicent Williams? Oh, I see, okay. You don't have to walk too fast. I see you have.
Good evening. My name is Millicent Williams. I'm glad to get a chance to stand before the new commissioners for the Police Commission Board. I am that 63-year-old woman that Zakiba Rudy was just spoke of, that was sexually assaulted by one of your finest police officers. One night, heading home at 2 o'clock in the morning, I was pulled over by one of your police officers, Mr. Officer Newberry, coming down a very dark street. I know, I hear it all the time, go to a lit area. He had to be familiar with that same slogan. If you fear or at a dark area, go to a very lit area. He put his floodlights on me without putting on his hazard lights or his red and blue lights. He put his floodlights on me, which literally blinded me. I had no idea there was a police officer behind me. I lowered my speed, put on my flashes to indicate to him that I was aware of the fact that he was behind me. I didn't know if it was a truck, a boat, a bus, a plane, because all I saw was lights. I went to the very nearest place, which there was my area that I live in, St. Louis County. And of course, there was his area that he patrols, that he knows that street is a very dark street. I got to the 7-Eleven, which is my intentions, because I knew the 7-Eleven was on that far corner, and I'm sure he was aware of that too. And as I pulled over and I parked my car, looking out my rearview mirror, he comes toward me, unfastened his gun holster. I was livid. I was about to pass out. I thought all I could be was in a mistaken of identity, because I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. He comes to my car, using profanity, and asks me, don't I know to pull over when I see a police car? I attempt to explain to him that I did not see the car, because all I saw was lights. Using profanity, get your ass out of the car, frightened me. I got out of the car with my hands, both my hands in the air. The first thing I said to calm him down, because he was like in a rage, I have no idea. I said, my husband was a retired police officer from the city of 40 years. I thought that would be enough for him, knowing that one of his counterparts was once a police officer, because I had no idea what that behavior was about. That didn't happen at all of his situation. He instructed me to stretch out my arms and spread my legs. He literally broke me from the top of my shoulders to my ankles. I'm standing in the middle of the parking lot. Then he handcuffed me. For all this behavior, I had no idea what was this behavior for. I'm a police officer's wife of 40 years. I pray for the police officers. I've always been one to know that there's two sides of a story. This compelling story that I shortened just to tell you, I called it a complaint. I read it to so many women that said this exact thing has happened to them. But with no avail, they get no response from the police department. I filed a citizen's complaint, and that happened on April the 2nd. It was August the 9th when I finally got a letter from Chief Belmar that says, I'm sorry for your aggravation, but we will take this up under advisement. Police officer will be reprimanded. Well, that was not sufficient to me because of the fact, when I gave that compelling story, his behavior just appeared that he had done it before. And all I could think is that he would do it again. Just like the young lady just left, I've been diagnosed now with PTSD. Trust me, I'm so terrified looking at all these officers. I see a police car, I see the lights, I literally just urinate on myself. I've got that problem that I've never had before, and that's because of the police officers. So now that we're having a new chief, and this, like I said, I came before the commission board, I never got a response. I never got a response other than the little letter from Chief Bellman saying, I'm sorry for your aggravation. And I'm sure if what I told them happened to me, if that happened to his wife, he would have known there was a little bit more than aggravation. I wasn't just given a ticket because I rolled at a stop sign. But to know of all the violations that he violated, not calling the call in, calling a backup, which was another male officer, that he called from his telephone that came to assist him. Of course, we know as a male officer, he had no business groping me, feeling all over me, and I have been terrified. To know that this is what the citizens have to go through. We hear this about the police officers, but they seem to do nothing. I'm more than here to say that this happened to me personally. I called in the complaint. I gave them step by step exactly what happened, that they know it had to be traumatized. I'm still traumatized from that very night. So I hope the next chief that we have be more sympathetic to the citizens when they make a complaint as such, to be more sympathetic, to let it be known what will be taken care of. As far as the officers, there's no way that Officer Dewberry, it's in the newsletter. We still asking for his termination. For one thing, I don't want anyone to lose their job, but for his behavior as a police officer, the next one he pulled over might not be as smart to think like I did, not to pull over, and can only imagine what could happen. Yeah, they're trigger happy. I have no idea was because I was black and he was white. I don't even know what his intentions were, but I know he knew to call that call in. As I said, I was a wife of a police officer, so there are some protocols that I know, but then there are some things that I knew without being a police officer's wife. So, picking your next chief, I hope it's someone to be more considerate and take the complaints of the citizens a little bit more serious than saying he was aggravated on such a sexual assault by a police officer. Thanks for your time. I'm glad I got a chance to present before you, the new commission, women that have joined the police commission board. Hopefully I can get a better response, because I still have not gotten anything other than a letter saying sorry for your aggravation. Thanks for your time.
Yvette Thompson? Yvette, I'm sorry.
My name is Yvette Townsend Sanders. What I want to see in the police department. Can you speak in the mic? My name is Yvette Townsend Sanders. Most of us see life through the experiences that we've had. And all of us may not have had the same experiences. I've always believed in the police. I used to. I don't anymore. But let me say this. There are wonderful, wait a minute, there are wonderful police officers. Just like there's good and there's bad. Okay? There are some wonderful police officers. But there are some bad ones. And those bad ones make the wonderful ones look bad. I, in 2011, experienced something I never dreamed I would ever experience. Recently on TV, I saw Tim Finch, who was at the time, the police chief at that time, say that he did not trust Kim Gardner. I'm thinking to myself, how can you say something like that? In 2011, I was blatant. God is my witness. If I'm lying, strike me dead. Every single word was a made-up, blatant lie. The police made a report saying that they encountered me and that I told them that I was going to kill somebody. I would have to be a zip fool. I would have to be a very ignorant person to say something like that. I've never said anything like that in my life. In my home, my husband who died of colon cancer, there was a plaque that I no longer have on the wall because he helped the police officer. He was given that because of his help to the police department. I think we need to have transparency. I think that we definitely need to have police that we can trust. Definitely need to have police that we can trust. I think that there is an underlying culture. It was like a Ku Klux Klan. When I went, I couldn't pay tax dollars. I'm paying St. Louis County taxes, okay? I go to get a police report. I was denied a police report. So when I went to Hazelwood Court, I asked the judge. I still didn't have a police report. I asked the judge. I said, "May I have a police report?" He said, "Yes, you may." When I stepped over to the prosecuting attorney's desk, he didn't want me to touch his pencil. Not only did he not want me to touch his pencil, he didn't want me to have a copy of that report, although he gave it to me because the judge told me that I could have it. That's when I realized and read it. I thought, that's why they would never give me a police report, because every single word of this police report is a lie. I mean, a made-up lie. At Christmas, I got a thing in the mail, looked like junk mail. At the end of it, it was only a D. There was a warrant for my arrest, and it said failure to appear. Yet I had no court date. I called the attorney. I said, "There's a letter here saying that there's a warrant for my arrest." They said, "You don't even have a court date." When I went down to Clayton, the police review board, a joke, an absolute joke. The guy's name was Green. The last name was Green. When I went down there to file a report against him, he didn't want me to do it. He didn't want me to do it. And every time they turned me away, finally I made up my mind. I went down there and I made out the report. His letter back to me when I told him the police had lied on me, his letter was, "I don't know, I wasn't there." Tim Finch, I faxed him, I wrote letters to him, I went into that department multiple times. He never called me back, he never got in touch with me, he never did anything. And it only made me think to myself, my God, why is this happening? How can this happen? I couldn't believe it. When I went to Hazelwood and I asked the short lady, a large short lady with missing teeth, when I asked her for a pen to write down something, she put her gum in the trash. She went down in the trash. She gave me a piece of paper as big as the tip of my thumb. I know you don't believe what I'm saying, but I'm telling you the truth. If you have not experienced it, you would not believe it. Yes, it made me frightened. I couldn't stay in my own home at Christmas. I had to leave my house at Christmas because of that, because I thought to myself, if they arrest me and get me there, God only knows what they're going to do because everything's closed. This is the truth. I thought they were high because she never looked me in my face. She kept her face turned. She kept her face turned. Nobody wants to be treated that way. I would never want to see any one of you treated that way, and I would never want to see any one of you treated that way. Not your children, not your father, not your anybody. I believe in good police officers. I do not believe everybody is bad, but we need good. We don't need bad.
Michelle Sonier? Soner? Am I saying that? Sonier? There you go. Thank you. And if we can keep our comments focused on the attributes of the next chief, that might be helpful.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I would like to say to God be the glory. And I was just sitting and listening to everybody and their concerns about what we were like in the new police chief. First of all, a lot police chief is not hard. And it's a big job. A lot of times when they get in there, there's a lot of things that are required of them. What I would like in a police chief is hopefully when they get in there, they don't stray. They look at the concerns of all the communities. They don't lose their way. If they have God in their life, like I was listening to the chaplain say, if they go righteously, go the right way, they won't do no wrong. And then another thing I would like to see happen in the communities is a lot of the police officers, I am a police officer, a lot of police officers that are on the force, a lot of them don't know the law. I'm just going to be honest with you. You got a lot of young people that have been in the force for 2 or 3 years. They come to somebody's home because I have witnessed it several times. Okay, I'm sorry. They'll come to somebody's home, they'll tell me this, which you know is absolutely wrong, and then you will challenge them, because I got 40 years under my belt. They'll say, let me give you a good example. You might have a problem with in somebody's home. I've witnessed this on several occasions, and we want them put out. This is what they told me. They've been there 3 days. Well, you have to go to court and get an eviction from somebody who's been in somebody's house for 3 days. Is that correct? Hello? But this is what I've been told on numerous occasions. Now, don't get me wrong. I've got some that come down my street that know me and they wave. I've got some cocky ones that come down the street that don't know nothing. So it's just been a battle, and I've been in my house for 29 years. So we just got to work together and try to make things a little bit better. We got wonderful people and we got bad people, and I've seen them both hands. We got some that come to people's houses and won't do absolutely nothing, just take a walk because they don't want to do paperwork. And then you come back, and next thing you know, you challenge people who have brought guns into people's homes, and they do absolutely nothing about it. So it's a problem that didn't start overnight. It's a problem that's not going to be fixed overnight. So we just got to work together and try to fix this problem. Not just on their part, but on our parts as well. Because at the end of the day, we are our brother's keeper. And we just have to work together. And that's all I have to say.
Yeah, is there anybody else that has anything they would like to bring up to us? Sir?
How you guys doing? My name's Selma Dorsey. I bought a house over on Effingham Lane about 2 years ago. And I used to dream about staying over here a long time ago. I used to play over here over by the lake. Now, as far as the police, I'm going to give a little background on me. I used to work for St. Louis City Police Department. I used to work in the Department of Corrections. Now I do heating, cooling, and plumbing. Okay? Now, when I first bought my place, my taxes was $1,900. I got 3 kids in college, okay? And I also have a fiance, all right? So I bought my place, wonderful. St. Louis County came in, I know this is unincorporated. It came in, and it wasn't even an even year. They upped my taxes to $3,800. And they told me, pay it or else. They assessed my house from a computer and said that I had a new deck and all this stuff. And see, now I have a problem because if I pay $3,800 for my taxes, I'm getting more square footage. So now I'm looking for somewhere in Troy with 5 acres, and I'm paying less taxes. But I don't want to move from over here, okay? As far as the police department, like I said, I used to be in law enforcement. I know a whole lot of guys that's on St. Louis County. But this guy named Kurt, what's his name? Mr. Porter. I believe in community, okay? I'm on a dead-end street. I let everybody know who I am, how you doing. I speak to my neighbors, and I ask my neighbors to watch out for my family. Because I'm not always at home. I do 16-hour shifts. Mr. Porter came and knocked on my door. Didn't know him from a can of paint. He didn't introduce himself when I bought the place, so don't come and introduce me now when you feel there's a problem. He was taking pictures of my place. He was taking pictures of my trailer, okay? Then he turned around and he said, you people. I haven't called. He's been on this board for 28 years. We need some change over here because these people that's been on the board time, it's a different way of thinking. It's a different law over here. Because there's young people like myself is buying over here. And all I'm saying is that I didn't like the way he talked to me. He didn't come off. If I did something wrong, introduce yourself first. That's how a community is. And then you come with your problem. Don't just knock on my door with a problem. You have my telephone number, you have my email address and all of it. But I feel that I pay what I pay for my house, and I don't believe in everybody, all the men that pays for what they own. I don't believe I should be dictated on what I can and as long as I'm not messing up my community, as long as I'm not, doing anything on my land that I'm paying for. That's mine. You can't come and take pictures. That's discrimination. Ever since I've been there, he's came and take pictures. The lady that walked the dog, she take pictures in the morning. That's not right. And you pushing me out, and go somewhere else to live. But I like where I live at. I like my neighbors. Guy broke in my truck. Never had this in the city. Was in the city for I don't know how, but I come out here, guy break in the truck. We call him. We took care of business. But all I'm saying is that we're tight. We tight on the dead end. We're tight. Okay. This is what I would love to happen, and if we can all come together and change some of these laws that y'all, because this is unincorporated. That means you all are governed by your own laws that's willing to be changed. They call the police on me. The police got more things to do to tell me to knock on the door and move my trailer. Well, that's not right. That's not right. You shouldn't be able to knock on somebody's door that's paying taxes. I pay you all. Like I said, I was law enforcement. If we didn't pay our taxes, you all wouldn't have your jobs. So you shouldn't, they shouldn't use the police department. I said we, because my mother was a sheriff, my grandfather, and I am a member of Victoria Lodge number 7. So I'm going to stand on my square and say that is wrong. I shouldn't have to be pushed out in a good environment, in a good neighborhood, just because you all want to govern you all self and raise people taxes and do it like that. And when that guy said, you people, I totally understand. I appreciate it. But you all shouldn't say, they shouldn't do that. Now I have to go in a board in April to adjust my taxes on the 9. You all have to, if you all set a rule, go by your rule. You couldn't assess my taxes on that odd year. And then if it's St. Louis County, go ahead.
Yeah, we can't help you with your taxes. That's not our job and function. What we're here is to listen to people tell us what we ought to be looking for in a new chief. Can you kind of focus on that for a second?
Well, as far as the police department in St. Louis County, I have the utmost. I have never had any issues. None before. I have friends that work for St. Louis County Police Department. But just don't use the police department when telling somebody to move a trailer. Like I said, you all got other things to do. And so do I. But just because you got a friend of a friend of a friend, don't knock on my door and tell me to move a trailer. Because then I'll come down to the sword and say, hey, you got something else better to do. He or she got something else better to do to move the trailer. That other one we had it today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I swear. I heard Victoria number 7. And we wasn't standing alone, brother. Always. My name is Roy Blackwell. I am an alderman in Cool Valley, former mayor of Cool Valley. And I'd like to say, St. Louis police could use a little bit of sensitivity training, okay? Now, we've heard a few things, of course, and this is real. I've had a situation right here in St. Louis County in this inn where a young lady was doing some walking and she had to fill out a report of a guy stalking her right here, right down the street, and the same report 5 different times of a guy stalking her. And I even had to go help her fill out the report right down the street. Okay, all right. It is what it is. I should be treated like anybody else. And she should be treated like anybody else. She shouldn't have to go fill out that same report 5 times. You could use a little bit of sensitivity training. We could use a little bit of help with education and awareness dealing with violence. We could use a little bit of help there. If you have well-documented, well-qualified people standing, looking you square in the face, and you're looking and you're saying, well, we need somebody well-documented, well-qualified people, but not you, not you. You're looking over, hey, don't do that. They're standing you, looking you in the face, don't do that. All right, you know what we're saying. We're staring you in the face. Well-documented, well-qualified people staring you in the face. I had a private meeting with Chief Belmar, and in that meeting, we're sitting there having a good cup of coffee, and he called in Lieutenant Doyle. Oh, turn around there, Chief, Lieutenant. And he came in and we started to talk about what's possible for the area we live in, what are some of the things going on in the area, and why we have such escalations in crime in Calvin, not Calvin Park, but Berkeley and areas around there. What's going on? What's causing it? What's the problem? And the first person we called in there was Mr. Doyle. All right. If you have a situation and you got competent people staring you, looking you in the face, don't look them over. We're right here. Thank you guys very much for your time. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Alicia Street. I am a resident of St. Louis County for 35 years now. I'm going to read this. The mission of the St. Louis County Police Department is to work cooperatively with the public and within the framework of the Constitution to enforce laws, preserve peace, reduce fear, provide a safe environment for our neighborhoods. I read that because I rarely see that being done in St. Louis County. We have, I'm sorry, I don't know if anybody has used this word yet tonight, but we have a corrupt system. And that system is within our police departments. And it hasn't just been the last few years of Michael Brown, it has been going on through the 90s and the 80s and the 70s and the 60s. But now it's time for us to have stop that corruption. It's time to bring it to an end. And I'm not against the bad police officers. There are some good police officers. But I'm against the bad officers that abuse their privilege, that goes beyond the right to protect and serve. The killer cops, the ones who are just out here harassing people for the color of their skin. The ones who are harassing people for driving and just using no blinker when they do it all the time. Ones who just don't have anything else to do with their time but to harass individuals. And not just really individuals, but a lot of young black men in St. Louis County. I have 6 nephews. All of them are of color. And I fear for their life every single day when they walk down the road. Because I never know if they're going to encounter a police officer who's just, having a bad day. Because they always seem to have a bad day